The intergalactic arena was alive with sound. Voices of 100 species filled the air, some sharp like breaking glass, others deep like rolling thunder. Lights flashed across the vast stadium, shining down on the sand-covered ground below. Above, banners floated in the air, each one glowing with the symbols of different empires. This was the grand tournament, the greatest contest of strength, skill, and honor in the galaxy. Every year, the strongest warriors from every star system came here to fight. No one expected much from the small planet called Earth. Until now, humans had never joined this competition. They were known as a young species, not very advanced in technology and not very strong compared to others. Most aliens thought of them as soft and weak, fit for farming or trade but not for war. That was why the stadium filled with laughter when the announcer spoke the next name. Entering the arena, representing Earth, the human, Daniel Hayes. A tall figure stepped out from the gate. Daniel was not covered in glowing armor or high-tech gear like the others. He wore simple combat clothes, light boots, and a short blade at his side. His hair was short and brown, his face calm but serious. The crowd shouted with disbelief. Some cheered out of curiosity, but most laughed or booed. To them, this human looked too ordinary to survive even a single fight. High above the arena, on a royal balcony decorated with silver and crystal, sat Princess Arinya of the Valoran Empire. She was tall, with smooth skin that glowed faintly in the light and eyes like twin stars. Her empire was one of the most powerful in the galaxy, and her people ruled many systems. She had seen many warriors fight, but when her eyes fell on the human, she did not laugh like the others. She tilted her head slightly and whispered to herself. Interesting. The announcer's voice echoed again. The first match will begin. Challenger Daniel Hayes of Earth will face Korak, champion of the Dragon Horde. The gate on the opposite side opened and a giant figure stepped out. Korak was almost 3 times Daniel's size. His body was covered in dark scales, his shoulders broad and his claws sharp. He carried a heavy axe that glowed with red energy. The crowd roared with approval, for Korak was well known. He had crushed many foes in the arena before, and no one doubted he would crush the human just as easily. Korak laughed, his deep voice shaking the ground. A human? This is no fight. This is a joke. Daniel did not answer. He simply tightened his grip on his weapon and took his position. His heart beat hard in his chest, but his eyes were steady. He had trained for months, preparing his body and mind for this moment. He knew he was smaller and weaker than most of his opponents, but he also knew that victory was not only about strength. The signal was given. The match began. Korak charged forward, his massive feet shaking the sand. His axe swung down with a roar, aiming to cut the human in half. The crowd held its breath, expecting the fight to end in one strike. But Daniel moved quickly. He rolled to the side, the axe hitting the ground with a loud crack. Dust rose into the air. Daniel sprang up and slashed with his blade, aiming for Korak's leg. The blade cut across the scaled skin, leaving a thin mark. It was not deep, but it was enough to make the giant roar in anger. The crowd gasped. A human had struck the Draken champion. It was not much, but it was something no one expected. Korak swung again, faster this time, his axe cutting through the air. Daniel ducked and stepped back, always moving, never staying in one place. He could feel the heat from the glowing weapon as it passed close to him. His muscles ached, his breath grew heavy, but he kept his focus. He remembered his training. Don't meet power with power. Use speed. Use mind. Again and again Korak attacked, but each time Daniel dodged, rolling or stepping just out of reach. Each time he found small openings, striking with quick cuts to the legs, arms, and sides. Slowly the wounds added up. Blood dripped onto the sand. The crowd grew louder, no longer laughing. Now there were shouts of surprise, even cheers. The human was lasting longer than anyone thought possible. Princess Arinya leaned forward on her throne, her golden eyes shining. He is not afraid, she whispered. He fights with thought, not just muscle. Korak grew frustrated. His pride was wounded. Stand still and fight me properly, coward, he shouted, swinging wildly. His strength shook the arena, but his anger made him sloppy. Daniel saw his chance. He let Korak swing one more time, then stepped close inside the arc of the weapon. With all his strength, he drove his blade into a weak point between the scales under Korak's arm. The giant roared in pain, dropping his axe. The crowd exploded in noise. Korak fell to one knee, clutching his wound. Daniel stood before him, breathing hard, sweat dripping down his face. He raised his blade high, but instead of striking again, he pointed it at the ground. He had made his point. The announcer's voice thundered across the arena. Victory! The human Daniel Hayes of Earth wins the first match. Silence fell for a moment. Then the arena erupted with cheers, shouts, and disbelief. Some aliens shouted in anger, others in amazement. But none could deny what had happened. A human had defeated a Draken warrior. Daniel lowered his blade and looked up at the crowd. His chest was still heavy with breath, but a small smile touched his lips. He had done it, not just for himself, but for Earth. From the royal balcony, Princess Arinya stood and clapped her hands once. The sound was soft, but in the quiet that followed, it carried across the arena. Well done, human, she said softly, though only those close to her could hear. You are not what I expected. And for the first time in history, the galaxy began to look at humans not with laughter, but with curiosity. The first battle was over, but Daniel knew it was only the beginning. Stronger foes awaited him. Yet deep inside he felt something else, hope. Humanity had taken its first step onto the stage of the stars. The arena had never been so loud. The roar of thousands of voices shook the air, echoing off the towering walls. Daniel Hayes, the human from Earth, stood in the middle of the sandy floor, his blade still in hand. His chest rose and fell quickly, but his face stayed calm. He had just done what no one thought possible. He had defeated Korak, the champion of the Draken Horde. For a few moments, the crowd did not know how to react. Some cheered wildly, impressed by his courage. Others shouted in anger, refusing to believe that such a small and weak being could overcome a warrior of Korak's strength. All across the stadium, voices mixed into chaos. High above, on the royal balcony, Princess Arinya watched with her golden eyes shining. She had been quiet through the fight, but now she stood. The silver ornaments on her royal gown glimmered under the lights. At once, the crowd began to settle. The princess rarely spoke in the middle of a match, and whenever she did, the entire arena listened. She raised her hand, and silence spread like a wave. Every eye turned to her, waiting for her words. Even Daniel looked up, curious and cautious. The princess's voice was clear and strong. Human, she said, her gaze fixed on Daniel. You have shown courage where others expected fear. You have shown skill where others saw weakness. You have given the galaxy a surprise it did not expect. Daniel stood still, unsure of what was coming next. Then her voice grew louder, echoing across the massive arena. Hear me, people of the Valoran Empire and beyond. If this human continues to fight, and if he wins this tournament, then he wins me. The words fell like thunder. For a heartbeat, the stadium was frozen in silence. Then an explosion of sound shook the very ground. Gasps, shouts, cries of disbelief. Every corner of the arena was filled with uproar. She cannot be serious, shouted one alien in the crowd. The Princess of Valora. To a human? Another screamed. This is madness, growled a third. Even the Drakons, furious over Korak's defeat, were stunned into silence. The announcer dropped his staff in shock. Daniel blinked, unsure if he had heard correctly. He raised his head again, looking up at the princess. What did you just say? He whispered, though his words were lost in the storm of noise. On the balcony, Princess Arinya remained calm, her face unreadable. She did not repeat herself. She simply sat down again, her eyes never leaving Daniel's. Confusion in the arena. The voices in the crowd grew louder. Some laughed, thinking it was only a royal joke. Others believed it was a true declaration, a challenge unlike any other. The nobles of the Valoran court turned to one another in disbelief. The princess cannot give herself away like a prize, one hissed. This will bring shame to the empire, another growled. But some, quieter and more thoughtful, murmured, perhaps she sees something we do not. Meanwhile, Daniel felt his stomach twist. He had come here to fight for honor, for Earth's pride. He had not expected this. He had not wanted this. To him, the idea of winning a person seemed strange, even wrong. Yet he also knew the customs of the galaxy were not the same as Earth's. The princess's declaration was more than personal. It was political. It was a statement to the entire universe that she saw value in a human. Daniel tightened his grip on his blade. I didn't come here for marriage, he muttered under his breath. I came here to show them what we're made of. But now, whether he wanted it or not, the rules of the game had changed. The crowd reacts. The announcer, still shaken, finally raised his staff again. You have all heard the words of Princess Arinya. The human Daniel Hayes will continue in the tournament. His next battle will be announced shortly. The crowd erupted again, but now there was a new energy. It was not just about a human fighting aliens anymore. It was about the fate of the princess herself. The stakes had been raised to a level no one had expected. Gamblers shouted, already placing bets on Daniel's survival. Nobles whispered, trying to understand the princess's motives. Warriors in the waiting chambers clenched their fists, eager to be the one who would stop the humans' rise. And above them all, Princess Arinya sat with a small, unreadable smile. Her guards leaned close, whispering urgently, "Your Highness, what have you done? The court will not approve. You cannot bind yourself to an alien, especially a human." But Arinya only raised her hand to silence them. "Watch him," she said softly. "There is more to this human than any of you see." Daniel's thoughts back in the fighter's chamber. Daniel sat on a bench, his blade resting across his knees. He replayed the princess's words in his mind again and again. "If you win this tournament, you win me." He rubbed his forehead and sighed. "What have I gotten myself into?" Other fighters passed by, glaring at him. Some mocked him openly. "You think you're special now, human?" One insectoid sneered. "He won't last another round," another hissed. "We'll make sure the princess never has to keep her word," growled a reptilian. Daniel ignored them, but their words pressed heavily on his heart. He had already been fighting against doubt and mockery, but now the pressure was far greater. He was no longer just fighting for Earth's pride. He was fighting under the eyes of an empire, with the fate of a princess hanging on his victory. Yet, deep inside, something stirred. He remembered why he had come here. Humans were seen as weak, unworthy, unimportant. This was his chance to change that. If he gave up now, all of Earth would remain in the shadows. If he fought on, he could give his people respect. And maybe, just maybe, the princess's declaration could be more than a trap. It could be a bridge. Princess Arinya's reason. While the fighters prepared for the next matches, Princess Arinya sat in her private chamber. Her servants bowed nervously, afraid to speak. Only her closest advisor, an elderly Velaran named Sarath, dared to ask the question. "Your Highness, why make such a bold claim? Do you truly mean to bind yourself to this human?" Arinya looked out through her crystal window, watching the stars beyond. "The galaxy underestimates humans," she said softly. "They see them as nothing. But I saw his eyes today. I saw no fear." "Do you know how rare that is, Sarath? Even the strongest warriors tremble before Korak. Yet this human fought with calm, with mind, with courage. If he can win here, then perhaps he is worthy of more than just survival. Perhaps he is worthy of standing beside me." Sarath frowned. "But Highness, the people will not accept them." "They will," she interrupted. "If he earns it." Rising tension as the next match was announced, the crowd buzzed with excitement. Daniel's name spread like fire across the galaxy. On distant worlds, people watched broadcasts of the tournament. Some laughed, waiting for him to fail. Others leaned forward with interest, wondering if a human could truly rise to greatness. Back in his chamber, Daniel stood, lifting his blade. His next battle would begin soon. He felt the weight of the princess's words pressing on his shoulders, but he also felt a new fire in his heart. The path was harder now. Every opponent would come at him with fury, determined to stop him. But Daniel was ready. He whispered to himself, "I'm not fighting for a crown. I'm fighting for Earth, I'm fighting for respect, and I won't back down." Above, in the royal balcony, Princess Arinya's golden eyes glowed with quiet confidence. She had set the galaxy on fire with her declaration, and now she waited to see if the human could rise higher still. The arena was no longer just a place of battle. It had become a stage for history, and Daniel Hayes was at the center of it. The arena sands were swept clean after Korak's defeat, but the air still carried the memory of that shocking moment. The story of the human's victory had already spread far beyond the stadium. Across the galaxy, screens lit up with replays of Daniel Hayes dodging the Dracon champion's axe and striking with speed instead of power. But here, inside the intergalactic arena, no one had time to rest. The tournament did not wait. Matches followed one after another, each more dangerous than the last. Daniel sat in the waiting chamber, sharpening his blade with steady hands. His arms were tired, his ribs still sore from Korak's heavy blows, but his mind was sharp. He could hear the roar of the crowd above, a mixture of anger, excitement, and disbelief. Then came the announcer's voice. "Next match, the human Daniel Hayes of Earth versus Veshra the Insectoid Blademaster." The insectoid blade master Daniel walked into the arena again. The cheers and jeers were louder than ever. This time he did not feel invisible. Every eye followed him. From the opposite gate came his new opponent, Veshra, tall and thin, with a body like a giant mantis. Her forearms each held a curved plasma blade that glowed bright blue. The crowd cheered loudly, for she was famous for her speed and deadly precision. Daniel studied her carefully. He knew brute strength had saved him against Korak's arrogance, but this was different. Veshra was fast, perhaps even faster than him. The signal was given. The match began. Veshra struck first. Her 4 blades flashed in the light, moving so quickly they blurred. Daniel barely dodged, rolling across the sand as sparks flew from where the plasma blades cut into the ground. The crowd roared with excitement. Daniel jumped to his feet, keeping his distance. He could not meet her weapon for weapon. His single blade would be cut apart. Instead, he moved lightly on his feet, circling, forcing her to chase him. Veshra hissed in anger. "You cannot run forever, human." Daniel said nothing. He watched her carefully, noting how her attacks followed a rhythm. 2 fast strikes, then a pause, then another swing. Her rhythm was perfect, but perhaps too perfect. He waited. Then, as she struck again, Daniel timed his step forward, slipping between 2 of her blades. His own blade flashed, cutting across one of her arms. A plasma sword clattered to the ground. The crowd gasped. Veshra screeched in fury, attacking faster, her rhythm broken. Daniel ducked and dodged, waiting again. Another opening came, and he struck. A second arm fell limp. In minutes, the mighty blade master had only 2 weapons left. She rushed at him with fury, but Daniel's patience paid off. He twisted aside and swept his blade across her legs. She fell into the sand. The announcer raised his staff. "Victory! The human wins again!" The arena shook with sound. Some shouted in disbelief, others in awe. Daniel raised his blade, not in boast but in respect to his fallen opponent. He had survived the second round. Above, Princess Arinya's eyes gleamed. "He learns quickly," she whispered. "He watches. He adapts." The illusionist Daniel's next match came sooner than he hoped. His muscles burned with exhaustion, but there was no time to rest. The announcer's voice echoed again. "Next match, Daniel Hayes of Earth versus Keleth the illusionist." The crowd cheered. Many believed this would be the end for the human. Keleth stepped into the arena. He was tall and thin, his body wrapped in flowing robes of silver. His eyes glowed with a strange light. He carried no blade, no weapon at all. Instead, he raised his hand and the air shimmered around him. The match began, and at once the arena changed. Daniel blinked. The sand beneath his feet turned into a dark swamp. The crowd above vanished, replaced by trees and shadows. Keleth had filled the arena with illusions. Daniel gritted his teeth. His heart raced. "None of this is real," he whispered to himself. But then monsters rose from the swamp, snarling, their claws reaching for him. He swung his blade, cutting through one, but another appeared, then another. His breaths grew heavy. His mind screamed at him that the danger was real, but deep inside he knew it was only a trick. Daniel closed his eyes. "Trust your senses, not what you see, what you feel." He slowed his breathing. He listened. Among the sounds of the swamp he heard it, the soft step of real feet on sand, not water. Daniel spun and swung his blade. It clashed against something solid. The illusion shattered, and the arena returned. Keleth stood before him, eyes wide with shock. Daniel pressed forward, striking again and again. Keleth tried to rebuild his illusions, but Daniel had already found the truth. With one final strike, Keleth fell to the ground. "Victory!" shouted the announcer. The crowd roared. Some shouted Daniel's name now, cheering instead of mocking. The human had survived illusions, speed, and strength. Respect in the arena. By the time Daniel returned to the fighter's chamber, whispers followed him. No longer was he just the weak human. Now he was the clever one, the survivor, the fighter who adapts. Other warriors began to look at him differently. Some glared with hatred, but others nodded with respect. Even those who wished to crush him could not deny his skill. Daniel sat on the bench, wiping sweat from his brow. He thought of Earth, of the people watching far away. He imagined their faces filled with pride that one of their own had made it this far. The thought gave him strength. Above, in her royal chamber, Princess Arinya stood alone. She looked out over the city beyond the arena. Her heart was steady, but her mind turned with questions. She had made a bold declaration, and the galaxy was still buzzing with her words. But now she wondered if her choice had been guided by more than politics. "Why does he fight with such spirit?" she whispered. "Why does he not quit even when the odds are against him?" She remembered the fire in Daniel's eyes. It was something rare, something she had not seen even among her own warriors. And against her will, admiration began to grow inside her. Rumors spread across the galaxy. Daniel's victories were broadcast everywhere. On trading stations, miners stopped their work to watch. On military ships, soldiers leaned closer to the screens. On distant colonies, children cheered as the human dodged plasma blades and cut through illusions. Some empires mocked him, saying his luck would soon run out. Others warned that perhaps humans were more dangerous than they appeared. And in quiet corners of the galaxy, whispers spread, the human might actually win. Daniel prepares for the next. Daniel's body ached as he rested in the chamber. His hands were blistered, his shoulders bruised, but he knew he could not slow down. Each round was harder and the strongest still waited. He remembered the princess's words again. "If you win this tournament, you win me." He shook his head. "I'm not here for her," he muttered. "I'm here for Earth." But deep down, he also knew her declaration had given him something he could not ignore. Purpose. The whole galaxy now watched him. If he fell, humanity's name would be laughed at forever. If he won, his people would stand tall among the stars. Daniel tightened the straps on his armor and lifted his blade. The road ahead was long, but he would not stop. In the arena above, the crowd still roared his name. And on the royal balcony, Princess Arinya's golden eyes shone with quiet pride. The battles were not over. The hardest trials were yet to come. But the human had already proven one thing to the galaxy. Humans were not weak. The intergalactic arena had grown tense. Every fight Daniel had won had changed the mood of the spectators. No longer did aliens mock him as a weak human. Now they watched with a mixture of awe, fear, and curiosity. Even those who had once laughed now whispered, "Perhaps the human can really win." Daniel sat alone in his chamber, his blade resting across his knees. Every muscle in his body ached. His ribs still bore the faint bruises from earlier battles, and his hands were sore from gripping his weapon. Yet there was no time to rest. The final match had been announced. Next match, Daniel Hayes of Earth versus General Zorath, the undefeated champion of the Valoran Empire. A hush fell over the chamber. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment and exhaled. He knew the stories. Zorath was a giant among giants. His victories were countless, his strength unmatched, and his skill legendary. No one had ever defeated him in the arena. And yet, Daniel also knew that victory was not only about strength. If I can outthink him, if I can move faster than he expects, I can win, Daniel thought. I have to. For Earth. General Zorath enters, the arena gates opened, and the crowd held its collective breath. From the shadows came a figure so large that the sand seemed to quake beneath his feet. Zorath's armor gleamed like black steel adorned with silver spikes. His eyes glowed red, scanning the arena with a predator's intensity. When he spoke, his voice boomed like thunder. "So the human has survived this long. Perhaps the galaxy is less foolish than I thought." Daniel stepped forward, gripping his blade tightly. He felt the weight of the eyes of every alien in the galaxy upon him. There was no room for hesitation. Princess Arinya watched from her balcony, her golden eyes fixed on both combatants. She had never seen anyone face Zorath and survive. She felt a mixture of excitement and fear. This human, he may be the first to truly challenge him. The clash begins, the signal sounded. Zorath charged with terrifying speed, his massive sword slicing the air. Daniel dodged, feeling the wind from the strike whip past his face. His heart pounded, but his mind stayed sharp. The arena shook as Zorath struck again and again. Each blow carried the force of a small earthquake. Daniel dodged and rolled, keeping his distance, looking for patterns. He could not overpower Zorath, he had to outsmart him. He noticed something. Zorath's swings were powerful but predictable. Every third strike, he paused slightly, preparing for a stronger blow. Daniel memorized the rhythm. He moved in sync, using the pause to his advantage. The crowd roared as Zorath's sword clashed against the ground, sending sparks flying. Some cheered Daniel on, others gasped at how close he came to being struck. The tension was unbearable. No one had ever faced the undefeated champion and survived this long. Daniel's strategy. Daniel knew he could not fight Zorath like he had fought Korak or Veshra. Speed alone would not win this battle. He had to use the arena itself. Looking around, he saw the large pillars on the edges of the sand floor. They were meant as obstacles for strategy and showmanship. Daniel sprinted toward one, dodging another massive swing, and jumped, landing on its side. He used it to push off and strike at Zorath's exposed leg. The champion roared in pain but barely faltered. Again and again, Daniel used movement, the environment, and precise timing to stay alive. Every attack he made was calculated, aimed at forcing Zorath into mistakes, and the champion, confident in his overwhelming strength, began to underestimate the human. The turning point minutes passed, though it felt like hours. Both fighters were exhausted. Zorath's armor bore marks from Daniel's blade, his confidence shaken. The crowd watched in stunned silence, unable to believe the human had survived this long. Daniel's mind raced. He saw the tiniest weakness, a gap in Zorath's armor at the right knee, barely noticeable but enough. If he could strike there at the right moment, he might unbalance the champion. Zorath swung his sword in a powerful overhead strike. Daniel rolled under it, then jumped to the side. With all his strength, he thrust his blade into the gap. Sparks flew as metal met metal. Zorath staggered. Daniel pressed forward, striking again and again at the weak points he had studied. The arena shook as the champion stumbled. The crowd rose to their feet, shouting, clapping, and cheering. Even the nobles whispered in shock. Princess Arinya watches on the balcony. Princess Arinya could not hide her amazement. She had made a bold declaration, and now she was witnessing a human fight in a way she had never seen before, using intelligence, courage, and heart to match raw power. "He is extraordinary," she whispered. "I have never seen such focus, such control. He may truly win." Her advisors shook their heads in disbelief. "Your Highness, this is impossible. He is just a human." Arinya only smiled faintly. Perhaps it is time the galaxy learned not to underestimate humans. The final strike, Zorath, realizing he was in danger, roared and charged again with all his might. His sword moved faster, harder, but his blows were sloppy now, fueled by desperation. Daniel waited, watching the rhythm, breathing steadily. At the perfect moment, as Zorath's massive sword came down, Daniel rolled to the side and kicked up sand into the champion's eyes. Blinded for a split second, Zorath faltered. Daniel seized the moment. Using a combination of agility and timing, he pushed off a pillar and landed a precise strike at the exposed joint in Zorath's armor. The champion collapsed, stunned and unable to rise. Silence fell. The sands of the arena seemed to hold their breath. Then the announcer shouted, "Victory! Daniel Hayes of Earth has defeated General Zorath." The crowd erupted like never before. Shouts, cheers, and cries of disbelief filled the air. Aliens of all species were on their feet, clapping and screaming. The undefeated champion had fallen, and the human had done it. After the battle, Daniel dropped to his knees, exhausted beyond measure. His body ached, his arms trembled, but his heart raced with triumph. He had survived every challenge and beaten the greatest warrior of the Velaran Empire. He looked up at the royal balcony, and his eyes met Princess Arinya's. She stood, her golden eyes shining, a proud smile on her face. She had kept her word, but more than that, she had seen something rare. A human who had faced impossible odds and overcome them. Zorath slowly rose to his knees, his face grim but respectful. "You are stronger than I imagined," he said. "Perhaps humans are not as weak as we believed." Daniel nodded, offering a hand to the fallen champion. Zorath accepted it, and the gesture was a sign of honor. The audience cheered not just for the human, but for the spirit of fair competition and respect. The princess's acknowledgement, Princess Arinya descended from her balcony, her gown shimmering in the arena lights. The crowd fell silent, waiting for her words. She approached Daniel and spoke clearly so that all could hear. "You have won, Daniel Hayes, not by strength alone, but by courage, wisdom, and heart. Today you have earned the respect of the galaxy. You have honored your people and you have honored yourself." Daniel bowed his head, exhausted but proud. "Thank you, Princess Arinya. I fought not for myself but for Earth. I wanted to show that humans are capable of more than others believe." The princess smiled. "And you have. Perhaps in time the galaxy will see humans as equals, not underlings. Your victory is the first step." The crowd's response, the cheers, were deafening. For the first time, humans were not seen as weak, not laughed at, not dismissed. They were recognized as a species of courage and determination. Daniel had done more than win a tournament. He had changed perception across the galaxy, and for Daniel, the exhaustion, the pain, and the fear were forgotten for a moment, replaced by pride. He had not only survived, he had triumphed. And now the ultimate challenge, Princess Arinya's bold promise, loomed ahead. The arena was alive with tension. Every match Daniel Hayes had fought had brought him closer to this moment, but the final battle had left his body trembling and aching. His muscles were sore, his arms heavy, his breath short, yet he stood tall. Across the arena, Zorath's defeat still resonated in the minds of every spectator. Aliens whispered to each other, some in awe, some in disbelief. No one had thought a human could defeat the Valoran Empire's undefeated champion. And now, with only a few challengers remaining, Daniel had proven that humans were not to be underestimated. Yet the tournament was not over, not until the princess herself stepped forward. Princess Arinya's words, princess. Arinya descended gracefully from her royal balcony. Her golden eyes scanned the arena, shining with pride and quiet amusement. The crowd fell silent as she raised her hand. People of the galaxy, she announced, her voice clear and commanding, you have witnessed something remarkable. A human, Daniel Hayes, has overcome challenges thought impossible. He has defeated Korak, Veshra Keleth, and even General Zorath, and today he stands before us as the champion. Whispers ran through the crowd. Some shouted in disbelief, others cheered with admiration, but all eyes were on Daniel. She stepped closer and spoke directly to him. Daniel Hayes, you have won this tournament. By my promise, you have earned my respect, not as a prize, not as a token, but as a warrior equal to any in the galaxy. Daniel blinked, his chest rising and falling as he tried to catch his breath. I didn't fight for you, he said humbly. I fought for Earth. I fought to show that humans are capable. Arinya smiled. And in doing so, you have earned something far greater than a trophy. You have proven the strength of your people and the power of courage and intelligence. The audience reacts. The crowd erupted. The cheering was louder than ever before. Aliens of every shape, color, and size clapped, stomped, and shouted. Some were still in shock that a human had achieved what no one else had. Others began to chant Daniel's name, a sound that seemed to carry across the stars themselves. On distant planets, broadcasts showed humans' faces lighting up with pride. Children pointed at the screens, dreaming of adventure and bravery. Soldiers and scholars alike shared the news. A human had earned the respect of the galaxy. Daniel lowered his blade and looked around. He had never imagined this when he first stepped into the arena. He had come to fight, yes, but to do so with honor, not for fame. And now, the galaxy recognized humans as a species of courage, intelligence, and perseverance. Recognition and honor. Zorath, still recovering from his defeat, slowly rose to his feet. He approached Daniel with careful steps. His massive armor clanked with each movement. When he stopped before Daniel, he bowed slightly, a gesture of respect. You have fought well, human, Zorath said. Your skill, your patience, and your courage are unmatched. Today you have changed how the galaxy sees your kind. Daniel nodded, his exhaustion balanced by pride. Thank you, General Zorath. I only hope that our people can live up to this recognition. The other competitors, those who had doubted him or tried to defeat him, now bowed or nodded. Some quietly muttered apologies, others words of respect. The arena had shifted. No one could look at Daniel as a mere human any longer. Princess Arinya's choice. Arinya approached Daniel, her gown shimmering like starlight. The crowd held its breath, waiting to see if she would honor her promise. Daniel Hayes, she said softly but firmly, you have shown that humans are capable of more than the galaxy believed. I gave my word in the arena, and I intend to honor it. You have earned my respect, my trust, and my recognition. The crowd erupted again, louder than ever, yet Daniel's focus remained steady. He stepped forward, bowing his head. Princess Arinya, I do not fight to own anyone, and I do not wish to take advantage of your words. I fought to show that humanity is strong, and to earn respect for my people. That is all I seek. For a moment, silence fell. Then Arinya smiled warmly. And you have done exactly that. That is why I stand before you, not as a prize, but as an ally. You have shown wisdom, courage, and heart. These are qualities any kingdom, any species would honor, and I honor you for them. A new understanding. The crowd slowly understood. Daniel had not fought for herself, but for something far greater. He had maintained his dignity, his morals, and his humanity throughout the battles. And Princess Arinya had recognized that true victory was not in claiming someone as a prize, but in earning respect and building bonds. The arena shook with cheers once more. Aliens, young and old, warriors and citizens alike raised their voices in admiration. Humans had arrived. They were no longer seen as weak or unimportant. They were now a species of honor, intelligence, and courage. Even distant empires took notice. Messages of congratulations and curiosity began to flow toward Earth. And in the minds of every human watching, a spark of pride ignited, celebration and reflection. Daniel stood in the center of the arena, his blade lowered. He looked around at the cheering crowd, then at the fallen warriors who had challenged him. He bowed to them in respect. Princess Arinya stepped beside him. "You have given your people hope," she said softly, "and you have given the galaxy a new perspective. Never forget that strength alone does not make a hero. Wisdom, courage, and heart do." Daniel nodded, exhausted but smiling. "I will remember, Princess, and I will do everything I can to show humanity deserves this chance." She extended her hand, not as a token or a prize, but as a sign of alliance and friendship. Daniel took it, and in that gesture, the arena witnessed more than a battle. It witnessed the beginning of a new era, humanity's place among the stars. As the tournament concluded, Daniel's story spread across every star system. Humans were no longer underestimated. Children dreamed of adventure, soldiers trained harder, and diplomats used his victory to open new alliances. And in the Valoran Empire, Princess Arinya spoke to her council. "Let all know that humans are not a threat to be ignored. They are a species of courage, intelligence, and honor. Treat them as equals, and we will gain allies for generations to come." The crowd dispersed slowly, buzzing with stories of the human who had faced impossible odds. Daniel's name was whispered in awe, repeated in excitement, and celebrated across the galaxy. He had won not just a tournament, but the respect of countless civilizations. A hero's quiet moment. Later, when the arena was empty, Daniel stood alone, looking at the stars above. His body ached, but his heart was full. He thought of Earth, of the people who would hear of his journey. He thought of the battles, the victories, and the friends he had made along the way. Above, Princess Arinya's gaze lingered on him, her golden eyes shining with quiet admiration. Not as a prize, but as someone who had earned honor, Daniel whispered to himself, "We've only just begun." And in that moment, the galaxy seemed a little smaller, and humanity a little greater. One human had shown the stars that courage, intelligence, and heart could overcome any obstacle. One human had changed history,